So before I show you the video of Caitlin Clark with the Fever coaches, I want to show you a couple of things. These are two relatively well-known players. One of them is named Tom Brady. This is Tom Brady on the sideline with the offensive coordinator at the time, Bill O'Brien of the Patriots, who was the offensive coordinator during all the success that Brady and Belichick had, yelling at each other, arguing, passionate, heated conversation on the sidelines. So that happened.
The cameras caught everything. Caitlin Clark was screaming, the coaches were firing back, and the tension in the Indiana Fever huddle just reached a boiling point that nobody expected. This wasn't just a minor disagreement. It was a full-blown sideline explosion that left fans and commentators completely stunned. Stephanie White finally reached her limit, and the exchange that followed has sent shockwaves through the entire WNBA community. The face of the league and her head coach were locked in a battle of wills that looked like it could change the trajectory of their season forever.
The thing, because of the thing that the Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White dynamic has become, which again, I think it's become I'm just gonna be blunt with all of y'all, a toxic talking point. The way that Stephanie White has been painted, not if you disagree with her coaching or think she's a bad fit for Caitlin Clark, even though the success of the offense would speak otherwise right now, and the success of Caitlin Clark would speak otherwise right now. But I can understand that argument. It's the villainizing that has taken place. But nonetheless, there was an exchange with Caitlin Clark and Breanne January, who's sort of the defensive specialist for the Fever, and
it started with a missed rotation on the defensive end, but it quickly spiraled into something much deeper. You could see the fire in Caitlin's eyes as she gestured wildly toward the court, clearly frustrated with how things were playing out. But instead of the usual calm coaching moment, the response she got was sharp, immediate, and undeniably heated. The cameras stayed zoomed in as the words flew back and forth, capturing a raw level of intensity that we rarely see during a live broadcast. This was the moment the honeymoon phase officially ended.
That has taken place. But nonetheless, there was an exchange with Caitlin Clark and Breanne January, who's sort of the defensive specialist for the Fever, and certainly it got a little heated on the sideline. AB's there watching. Continues for a second here. Moment of frustration about, I'm guessing, like, again, I'm not a mind reader, so I don't know what this is about, but considering January is tasked with the defense,
people are calling it a toxic dynamic, and looking at the footage, it is hard to argue that things aren't getting incredibly tense behind the scenes. Stephanie White has been painted as the villain by some, while others think Caitlin is simply too much to handle for a first-year coach under this kind of pressure. The reality is that the Fever's success on offense is being overshadowed by these public displays of friction. When your superstar is seen walking away to the far end of the bench just to get away from the coaching staff, you know there is a serious problem brewing.
Means zero. As far as, here's another look at it. I mean, it shows you that Caitlin is passionate, which ultimately is a good thing. That Caitlin Clark is so engaged and so fiery. When she plays with fire and when she plays with passion, that's when she's at her best. So these are examples of two people wanting the Fever to get to their best version. But regardless, I take it as a good sign. That woman in the back is like, what's going on here? I take it as a good sign from Caitlin Clark that she's so invested and so passionate and willing to, talk like that. Because Caitlin, has a lot to say, should have a lot to say. And there was another moment.
Let's look at the actual footage of the exchange with Breanne January, the team's defensive specialist. January is known for her grit and her high standards on the defensive side of the ball, which is exactly where the friction started. As Caitlin came off the floor, the two of them were immediately in each other's faces. It wasn't a good job pat on the back, it was a finger-pointing, high-volume argument about positioning and missed assignments. The look on the face of the woman sitting behind them said it all. She looked like she wanted to disappear.
White was pointing, like, so many people were making it out like she's like, "You're holding me back! Release the shackles!" And Stephanie White was, "No! You will be playing in my offense! You will not play free!" The dramatization of the entire thing. But This was what actually happened here. You can see it. And then everybody's trying to make it, you know, they had a little bit of an exchange. Caitlin moves away. She's going back into the game. So look, here's the thing about it. And again, my guess is it's about, you know, the Fever have been harping. Everybody, Kelsey Mitchell talked about it. Sophie Cunningham talked.
The narrative that Caitlin is being shackled by this coaching staff is gaining massive traction online. Fans are convinced that Stephanie White is trying to force a restrictive system on a player who needs to play free and fast. During this specific exchange, the body language told a story of total defiance. Caitlin wasn't just listening, she was arguing her point with a level of swag and aggression that we haven't seen since her college days at Iowa. She wasn't backing down an inch, and the coaching staff seemed just as determined to put their foot down and establish authority.
And defense is a lot about communication and where you are on the floor. Hell, when I play pickup ball, I argue with people all the time because sometimes, you know, I'm not fighting through all these picks if the shot that they're getting is one step inside the 3-point line, right? Like, I'm going to sacrifice that via the scouting report, but somebody else thinks you should stay with your man the whole time, whatever. There can be philosophical arguments, but there can also be process arguments in the middle of it. And oftentimes on defense, somebody, you know, might get open and you're wondering, all right, how did that happen? Well, did somebody miss their rotation? Did somebody make the decision in the moment? This was the better place for me to go contest, but the coach thinks you should have stayed here and that's the kind of thing that I'm getting.
To understand how significant this is, we have to look at the precedents set by other legends of the game. We've seen Tom Brady go absolutely nuclear on his offensive coordinators on the sidelines during Super Bowl runs. We've seen LeBron James openly ignore or argue with coaches like Darvin Ham when he felt a play wasn't being called correctly, but those were established veterans with multiple rings. For a rookie, even one as generational as Caitlin Clark, to be having these kinds of public blowups this early in her career is practically unheard of in the modern era.
Playful remark from Caitlin Clark about January and her defensive acumen. This is from Caitlin's story. Coach was there. And I know she had these poor kids just repping defensive slides for hours, eyes crying. She even tagged her. So these two have a good relationship. Just like I know Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White have a good relationship from a fundamental standpoint. That doesn't mean they can't clash on the court. So all in all, I would say this is more good than bad. This is more good than bad, considering it shows how invested Caitlin Clark is.
Some insiders are suggesting that this is actually a sign of a healthy winning culture, but the optics are undeniably messy. When Stephanie White snapped, it was a reaction to the constant back and forth that has been building up over several games. The Fever have been harping on one word: defense. Every single player, from Kelsey Mitchell to Aaliyah Boston, has been talking about it. But when the heat of the game is on and the scouting report goes out the window, that's when the philosophical arguments turn into the kind of sideline shouting matches that go viral in minutes.
You know, and that's the Caitlin Clark, you know, the one that screams at JC Sheldon, you like that. The one that you know, brought all that swag to the college game. You know, that competitive fire, that competitive juice, that shows you she's cared, she's invested. And then, yeah, the Fever do have to get better on the defensive end because their offense has whatever you want to say about it. And you can disagree, but Caitlin has a high usage rate. They're running a lot of pick and rolls. They're scoring a lot of points. So objectively speaking, the offense has been productive and is doing well. Now, does that mean it's reached its...
The most telling part of the video was when Caitlin eventually walked away and sat at the very end of the bench. Some analysts want to claim she was just getting ready to check back in or giving herself space to breathe, but the timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. It looked like a clear statement of frustration. In a league where every move is scrutinized, moving away from the huddle is a loud way of saying you're done with the conversation. It creates a visual of isolation that the media has been feasting on since the final buzzer sounded during that game. There is a growing concern that the relationship between Clark and White might be reaching a point of no return if they can't get on the same page. The offense is objectively productive, but the defense is where Stephanie White hangs her hat. If Caitlin isn't buying into that defensive vision, or if she feels she's being unfairly singled out for team-wide failures, the friction is only going to get worse. You can see the moment where the coach basically tells her to play within the system, and Caitlin's reaction is one of pure, unadulterated disbelief and massive pushback. What makes this even more complicated is the history between Caitlyn and Brianne January. Not too long ago, Caitlyn was joking on Instagram about how January's defensive drills were so hard they had poor kids crying. It seemed like they had a playful, respectful bond. But the Sideline video showed a completely different side of that relationship. When the pressure of a professional game is at its peak, those playful remarks vanish. Instead, you get raw emotion and a defensive coach who is clearly tired of seeing her schemes fall apart on the floor due to a lack of execution. Think about the intensity of the collegiate game that Caitlyn came from. She was the undisputed leader who essentially called her own shots. Now, she's in a professional system where her high usage rate is being analyzed under a microscope, and every defensive lapse is highlighted in the film room. The transition has been anything but smooth, and these sideline snaps are the physical manifestation of that growing pain. Stephanie White isn't just coaching a rookie, she's coaching a movement, and the weight of that responsibility is clearly starting to show on her face. The toxic talking point that the commentator mentioned is exactly what the Fever are trying to avoid, but they aren't helping themselves. When you have these exchanges caught on high-definition cameras, you are giving the critics exactly what they want. The drama sells, but it can also destroy a locker room from the inside out. If the players are arguing about philosophical differences in the middle of a game, it suggests that the preparation during the week isn't sticking when the lights are at their brightest. This is a level of dysfunction that could derail everything. Let's talk about the specific play that seemed to trigger the loudest part of the argument. It appeared to be a pick and roll coverage where someone missed a rotation, leading to an easy bucket for the opposition. In the video, you can see Caitlyn pointing to where she thought the help should have been, while the coaches are insisting she should have stayed with her player. It's the classic process versus result argument. Caitlyn is playing with her gut, but the coaches are demanding she follow the scouting report to the letter, regardless of what her instincts are saying. It's important to remember that Caitlin Clark is at her best when she's playing with fire, when she's screaming, when she's bringing that swag, she's usually dominating the game. But there is a very fine line between competitive fire and disrespect for authority. The question everyone is asking is which side of the line she was on during this exchange. If she's challenging the coach's knowledge in front of the entire team, it creates a power vacuum that can be incredibly dangerous for a franchise trying to rebuild its identity and culture from the ground up right now. Stephanie White's coaching style has always been about accountability and precision. She's not the type of coach to let a superstar slide just because they sell tickets. That's likely why she snapped in the first place. She needs her point guard to be an extension of her on the floor, not a rival. When the cameras caught that look of pure frustration on White's face, it wasn't just about one play. It looked like the exhaustion of a coach who is trying to manage the biggest personality the WNBA has ever seen while trying to win games in a very tough environment. The social media reaction to this has been a total war zone. Half the fans are saying, "Let Caitlyn be Caitlyn," while the other half are demanding she show more respect to a coach who has been in the league for decades. The release the shackles narrative is a powerful one, especially for fans who followed her record-breaking college career. They want to see the long-range bombs and the flashy passes, not the gritty defensive rotations that Stephanie White is demanding. This clash of styles is the core of the drama we are seeing on the sidelines every night now. If you look closely at the end of the exchange, you see Caitlyn walking away while the coach is still talking. In the world of sports psychology, that is a massive red flag. It shows a breakdown in communication that usually requires a closed-door meeting to fix. While some want to downplay it as normal player-coach interaction, the level of heat involved suggests it's anything but normal. You don't see this level of vitriol on every team every night. This is unique to the high-pressure environment surrounding the Fever and their new generational talent on the roster. The comparison to Tom Brady and Bill O'Brien is actually quite revealing. Those two had a combustible relationship because they both cared so much about winning. They would scream at each other for 4 quarters and then hug it out after a touchdown. The problem is that Brady and O'Brien had years of equity and success to fall back on. Caitlyn and Stephanie are still in the building phase. They don't have a championship trophy to act as the glue for their relationship yet, which makes every blow-up feel significantly more permanent and damaging to the team's future. There is also the LeBron factor to consider. When a player has as much influence as Caitlyn Clark, the coach is often the one who ends up on the hot seat first. We saw it with Darvin Ham in Los Angeles. Once the star player and the coach aren't aligned, the clock starts ticking. If Stephanie White can't find a way to channel Caitlyn's passion without it turning into a sideline spectacle, the front office might be forced to make a very difficult decision sooner than anyone expected. The pressure is mounting from every single angle on this coaching staff and player. Despite the chaos, the stats show that the offense is actually working, the Fever are scoring points, and Caitlyn is putting up numbers that most rookies could only dream of. But as the saying goes, offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. Stephanie White is clearly willing to risk a public argument to make sure that second half of the equation is addressed. She is pushing Caitlyn to be more than just a scorer, and that kind of tough love is always going to produce some friction before it produces results. The question is if they have enough time to wait. The real test will be how they respond in the next game. If we see another exchange like this, it's no longer an isolated incident of competitive juice. It's a pattern of behavior. The league is watching, the fans are watching, and most importantly, the opponents are watching. They see the cracks in the foundation, and they will exploit that lack of unity every chance they get. The Fever are at a crossroads, and the way Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark handle this unbelievable exchange will define their entire season, and potentially their long-term future together. Ultimately, this sideline explosion is a reminder that the path to greatness is rarely a smooth one. Whether you see it as a toxic disaster or a necessary fire, there is no denying that the stakes have never been higher for the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, but talent alone doesn't build a dynasty. Alignment does. If they can turn this heat into light, they might just become the powerhouse everyone expects. But if the snapping continues, this caught-on-camera moment might just be the beginning of the end for this partnership.